This show is part of the HeadStuff podcast network.
Lovely stuff.
Hey, lovely, lovely.
Tell you what, though, folks, that's bloody nice. That is bloody lovely.
Lovely Holly. Lovely toys. Lovely Holly.
Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of The Lovely Show. Unfortunately, Justine is not actually with us today. But instead, I've got a soundboard of hilarious sound effects. And I think that will make up for it. I think it will be just as interesting without Justine. I'm not exactly sure what she brings to the podcast anyway. And I think a bunch of silly sounds will be just as good as Justine. There you go. That's a perfect example of it. So today, well, folks, it's a Halloween spooktacular episode. We're going to be talking spooks. We're going to be talking spectres. We're going to be talking ghouls, ghosts, and things that give you the willies. I'm going to be giving you some hot Halloween tips and some spooky, scary movie suggestions to get you in the mood this Halloween night. I love Halloween. Halloween is great. I prefer it to Christmas. I think there's less emphasis. People put way too much. People put way too much emphasis on Christmas. It's built up too much, and you're spending weeks getting ready for Christmas, wondering what you're going to get. And I don't know. Since I was 10 years old, I stopped getting excited because you build it up too much in your head, and then it's not as much crack, and you're disappointed by your presents. And you're very, very sad. Sorry, that was the sound of a gunshot. That wasn't meant to imply that, I got so sad that I wanted to shoot myself in the head. As a sort of a funny party horn noise, just to take away from the gunshot there. So I loved Halloween. Halloween was great as a kid. Because I loved horror films, even though they scared the absolute shit out of me. I was the eldest, so I got to sneak away and watch films on the upstairs telly when my parents were downstairs. And I loved horror films. I loved going into video shops in Extravision and just looking at all of the cover art, the VHS cover art, and wondering like, oh my God, what's this about? And any chance I got, I would watch a horror film. I remember taking off school. I pretended I was sick because Psycho was on Channel 4 in the middle of the day. So I watched that. I remember my parents were going to, I think, like a medal presentation in the town, and they left me alone to mind my little brother. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was on the television, and I watched it because I knew it was going to be great crack, and it scared the absolute shit out of me. That's fucking annoying, actually. That sounded like it was recorded in a shed somewhere. But yeah, I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it disturbed me deeply, and it to the point where I had to ring up the hotel where my parents were, and tell them that somebody was trying to get into the house and I needed them to come home immediately. And they did. And then they couldn't find the man that I claimed was banging at the door. And my uncle drove up and down the road looking for a non-existent man. And I think they blamed a neighbour for years. So very sorry about that if he's listening. So yeah, I hope I didn't cause him any pain. So yeah, always loved Halloween, loved watching spooky films, loved carving a big old pumpkin, loved giving out sweets to the little kiddies. It's probably the only socially acceptable way to give out sweets to strangers, children. It's encouraged, in fact. And if you don't do it, they'll egg your gaff. So I suppose we're going to get into some tips for Halloween. Number one, don't be going for racially insensitive costumes. I think that's pretty much a given nowadays. Nobody really does it anymore, but you still do see the odd one. Like I remember in the Bebo days, man. In the Bebo days. Bebo days were a wild, wild west of the internet. And the photos people put up were shocking. Like several of my mates, one of them dressed up as Osama bin Laden with a bomb vest. I'm not sure if he was specifically bin Laden or if he was just sort of generic terrorist. Another one of my mates dressed up as Stevie Wonder, which was actually a very good costume. I think she found a little Casio keyboard in a skip on the way home from the pub, and then found a thing for dreading her hair, a hair dreader in the local shop, and she was like, I'm going as Stevie Wonder, and it was a great costume. But I tell you something, man, you wouldn't get away with that nowadays. I'm convinced. Remember when like Bebo shut down? I'd say the amount of cancelable photographs on Bebo is shocking. I'd say if I was Musk now, I would have bought Bebo, downloaded all them photos and just blackmailed everybody into doing my bidding. Number 2, I think if you're a bank robber, I think Halloween would be the best day to rob a bank. I'm really surprised there's not more bank robberies on Halloween, because there's already a lot of pranks going on. There's already a lot of mischief, mayhem. And there's already a lot of people wearing masks. So like if you went into a bank and you're dressed up as, a bunch of ghouls and goblins, you rob the bank manager rings the guards and they're like, or can you describe who robbed the bank? They're like, oh, it was like a wolf man and it was like a Dracula and a Frankenstein's monster. The guards are just going to go, all right, come on, lad. Stop wasting my motherfucking time, to quote Al Pacino in Heat. So yeah, and then you rob the bank and then you just slip away into the night with your big bag of cash. Ideally, you'd carry the money in large plastic pumpkins. So you just look like very tall children with sweets. And you just slip into the crowd and get away with it. So yeah, if you're a bank robber, I think, wait for Halloween. I think do it then, I don't know, do I have a kind of a sound effect that would go well with that? Not really. Maybe just another gunshot. Yeah. Don't shoot anybody. Don't shoot anyone if you're robbing a bank. Number 3, I think pick a comfy costume. A lot of times when people are picking costumes, they're trying to think, what's the funniest costume that I could wear today? And like Justine was saying last week, she dressed up as a packet of banshee bones. And she had to dismantle a PlayStation 1 dance mat in order to do it. And she was essentially like a big walking placard with mad hair, looking like a witch with her hands coming through some holes. Looks great in a photograph, but it's tough when you're getting onto a Lewis and it's packed, or you're trying to go to the toilet in a nightclub. So I think pick a comfy costume. Try and think of the comfiest creatures out there and dress up as them. Like a Frankenstein's not a bad idea because he's got a very comfy sort of casual suit. Something that, Tom Hanks might wear on Graham Norton. Just a big black suit with a black shirt, a big old pair of boots. And then you just sort of have sort of a head mask that just really goes on the top of your head. So you can drink pints. You can sort of eat nibbles, whatever you want. It's annoying when you're having to wear a mask and you're trying to drink a pint and you're lifting up the mask to drink it and you're just ruining the whole facade of the whole thing, Number 4, when you're buying sweets for kids, don't cheap out. Like I've, in previous years, I've gone to Aldi and I've bought a bucket of sweets the size of like a mayonnaise bucket that you get in a chipper. It's roughly the size of a drum that you'd use to feed cattle or carry water. They're about a foot in diameter, and they're just filled with the cheapest, shittest sweets that Aldi could make. And you end up, kids don't want them. Kids don't fucking want them. And they're looking for the mini Mars bars. They're looking for the fun-sized lads. And they're leaving behind all the shitty little sweets. So you end up with like a bucket of sweets for ages. I think I gave them away when I was on Dance with the Stars in fucking February. I brought in a bucket of Halloween sweets from the previous October to all the girls in the costume department. And they said thanks, but I really don't think they were that happy with what I had brought. Like, fucking Shane Brown brought in like a box of milk tray or something, and they much preferred them. So don't cheap out on the cheap sweets. What you can do is get the good stuff. Get the mini Mars bars, get the mini Snickers, and get the mini Twixes, even the Aldi ones. Like, instead of a Mars bars, they're called like Titans or something. Instead of Twixes, they're called like, I don't know, Fat Fingers of chocolate. They've got like off-brand names, but they're just as good. So kids will love them. What you can do is you can cut the good stuff with the cheap stuff. Like a drug dealer. You want to get your drugs, and then you want to cut it with baby powder or something like that. So you need to do the same thing with sweets. You need to mix up the good sweets with the shit sweets. So when you're handing them out to kids, they feel like they're getting a good deal. Because if not, they will egg your house. And if you're worried about getting your house egged, what if you cover your house in rashers? If you just covered your roof and the outside of your walls with rashers, I think that would put off a child egging it, because rashers and eggs look so good together. And I think a child's mind knows this. And rather than creating a lovely image of eggs and bacon, a child would just move on to the next house.
This show is part of HeadStuff Podcasts. Here's another show you might like. Listen, I'm Delicious with Garen Noon.
Well, hello there. Sorry to interrupt the fine podcast you were listening to, but I thought after you listen to this podcast, you might want a bit of company. So you could come over and listen to my delicious podcast, Listen, I'm Delicious. Can I interest you in a lovely biscuit? Well, maybe I can interest you in some lovely conversations with some of Ireland's greatest people, talking about some of the greatest foods ever made known to man. Come and enjoy it now. Listen, I'm Delicious. Out now on HeadStuff Podcasts.
Lovely stuff.
Watch scary films, even if you hate scary films. Like, I love scary films, but I know loads of people say like, oh, I just don't like scary films. My friend's mom loves scary films and his dad hates them. And he always just says, why would you want to be scared? Huh? Why would you want to be scared? Why would you put yourself through that? He doesn't understand it. Same with roller coasters. Why would you want to be going up and down and getting a big fright? Isn't the world scary enough? Which is a fair point. But I think it's good to be scared. I think it's good to be out of your comfort zone, to give that little burst of adrenaline. I don't know, it feels good, because like in the olden days when we were chased around by tigers and stuff, or dinosaurs, it would have scared the shit out of us. But then you'd be going back to the cave and you'd be going, geez, that was a close one, lads, Feel great now. So I think it's good to be scared. So I've got a number of Halloween movie recommendations, and to do something different, like I could, just go with the old classics of like Exorcist or whatever, The Shining, but I've gone for Irish horror films. So here's my recommendations for Irish horror films. So let's just open the door to scary horror films. Jesus Christ, that door is in need of a good bit of WD-40. Sorry about that. It's a very, very squeaky door. I didn't realise the door to my Halloween scary films recommendations was so creaky. Sorry about that. Here's 4 Irish horror films that you should definitely check out. The first one is You Are Not My Mother. You're Not My Mother, directed by Kate Dolan, who also wrote the film as our feature debut. Teenager Shar and her mother Angela share a house with her grandmother Rita. Relations are fraught as Angela's poor health and erratic behaviour cause Rita to become increasingly impatient and Char to isolate from her bullying classmates. When Angela, the mam, disappears overnight, she's oddly unfamiliar upon her return that Rita and Char feel that she's been switched by a malevolent force. Things reach a fiery climax on Halloween night when Char realises she is the only one who can save her mammy, even if it means losing her forever. You should definitely check this out. It's Kate Dolan's feature debut. She's a really, really good writer-director, and she's gone on to class things since then. And it's a lovely mix of dysfunctional Irish family with a bit of mental illness, and then a scary Irish legend, the legend of the Changeling. So you should check that out this Halloween. I think it's good, especially to watch Irish horror films on Halloween, because it's closer to home and it's scarier. I mean, like, you go watch The Shining, but you're not going to get scared of a big hotel in Colorado, because you're never fucking going to Colorado. You're never going to do that. But you could go to a housing estate in North Dublin, and there's scary things there. Number 2, Hole in the Ground. It was written by Stephen Shields and Lee Cronin, and directed by Cronin. Stephen Shields went on to write Abigail, which came out last year, which was a big hit. It was a really, really good film about a vampire little girl. I'm not sure if that's a spoiler, but it was a class film. And Lee Cronin went on to direct the new Evil Dead Rise film. There are 3 great films, really, by 2 lads. Hole in the Ground is this one. Sarah, Shauna Kerslack, and her young son Chris move into a new home in the Irish countryside next to a forest that hides an enormous hole. Oh, straight away, I'm getting the willies, man. One night, Chris vanishes, the young lad, and then he reappears. He seems grand, not a hate wrong with him, but his behaviour grows increasingly disturbing, as a lot of young lads do. Sarah begins to fear that the boy who has returned may not be her son at all. So there's another Changeling story. The Changeling, I think, is common enough in Irish spooky stories and legends. The idea that your baba goes away and comes back. The fairies switch your baba and they replace him with a little prick, and then you have to raise this little wanker. And I think, that's an inherent fear all Irish parents have. What if my child turns into a prick? Is it because I did a bad job, or is it because the fairies took him? I think I would feel more comfort in the idea that the fairies swapped my child than me being a bad parent. So I really enjoyed that one, Hole in the Ground, by Lee Cronin. Check that one out. The Hallow. I saw this in the cinema when it came out. The Hallow. A conservationist from London moves to rural Ireland to survey an area of ancient forest believed by the superstitious locals to be hallowed ground. He unwittingly disturbs a horde of terrifying beings and must fight to protect his family. The film stars Michael McElhatton from Game of Thrones and Michael Smiley from The Lobster and Tyres from Spaced. It's got fairies, mushroom-based scary things, and a scene with a massive prick. Not what you're thinking. It's like a prick. It's like this fairy has a fucking prick from its nail, I think, that goes into a lad's eye. Not a penis. That one I really liked, because I've got a weird fear of like spores and mushrooms. And you know, you're walking through a forest and you kick a mushroom and a load of spores come up in the air, and you're like, hope that doesn't go into my body and turn me into like The Last of Us or something. So I think that taps into that kind of weird fear of nature. And and also mad locals from the country. I think if you're from Dublin, I think the idea of just moving to rural Ireland is probably scary enough. And number 4, this one's a bit of a Marmite. This one's not going to be everyone's favourite. It's a film called Rawhead Rex. It came out in the 80s. It was written by Clive Barker, who did Hellraiser, was probably his biggest one. And it stars Neil Tobin, the famous comedian, and a lot of Father Ted actors. It was originally supposed to be set in Kent, but then they're like, do you know what? It's much cheaper to film it in fucking Galway or somewhere. I don't know if it's Wicklow or Galway. But anyway, so when an unsuspecting farmer pulls up a stone column embedded in a barren field, he accidentally unleashes hell by freeing a lad called Rawhead Rex, a hulking monster that has been trapped there for thousands of years. With the seemingly unstoppable demon ramping through the local village, American historian Howard Hallenbach is faced with the task of putting Rawhead back in the ground for good. This film is absolutely mental. It kind of got mixed reactions. Some people love it and some people hate it. I love it. You'll probably end up laughing more than being scared. And initially, there's an... So it starts off with a load of lads in the field and they're trying to move a big stone that just looks like a massive stone penis in the field. And to be honest, if I was the farmer, I'd just cut around it. If you've got a massive penis stone in your field and you're cutting silage or you're baling or whatever, just drive around it. You're saving maybe a square bale of hay. 1 square bale of hay, and if I had the choice between, an extra bale of hay or unleashing like a 7-foot tall demon, I'd go with the bale of hay. Just lose the bale of hay, lads. But they're trying to move this stone anyway, and can't get it moved, so they fuck off anyway. And then I think your man goes back, and he eventually moves it, and this just like Arnold Schwarzenegger demon jumps out of the hole in the ground and just starts going on a rampage. But he's got a weird, it's like a weird metaphor for like terrifying male violence. Because initially in the drawing, in the comic or in the story, Clive Barker described him as like basically a big penis with teeth. So he's going around and he's just killing everybody. But he comes across a pregnant woman and then he gets scared of her. And you're like, oh, what's going on? Why is he afraid of pregnant women? And at the end, there's a bit in the film as well where he tempts a priest. There's like a local priest, and Rawhead Rex shows him like some visions and makes him join his side. And he baptizes the priest by piddling on him. So if you want to see the image of a 7-foot tall demon piddling on a Catholic priest in a church, and the priest isn't mad, the priest is loving it. The priest is loving it. Like, Quentin Tarantino in Dusk Till Dawn, where Selma Hayek is like pouring tequila down her leg into his mouth and he's like gobbling it up. Which, by the way, he wrote that scene. Like, Tarantino loves feet so much. He's like, hey, you mind if we have a scene where Selma Hayek puts her toes in my mouth and puts the tequila down into my mouth. And everyone's like, okay, Quentin, you can have this one scene. But that's how much that priest is enjoying getting pissed on. Like Quentin Tarantino licking tequila off a foot. I think the film ends with Neil Tobin showing like a Sheelany gig to the demon. And this image of female fertility just like pisses off the demon so much. The demon's like, he's sort of like Andrew Tate if he became just slightly more right wing. The image of a strong woman just destroys him and kills him and sends him back to the earth. So if that sounds good to you, I'd check out Rawhead Rex. We used to have it on video. It was a great old laugh. So they're my Halloween movie recommendations.
Lovely stuff.
I was looking into some of the history of Halloween. So I'm sure a lot of you know this, but some of our Yankee listeners may not know this. Halloween, the origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, or Samhain, if you're watching Halloween 3 and there's no Irish people working on the film. The Celts celebrated their new year on November 1st. This day marked the end of summer and the harvest and the beginning of the dark, cold winter, a time of year that was often associated with human death. Celts believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of the 31st of October, they celebrated Samhain, when it's believed that it was the one day of the year where you could have full sex with a ghost. That was it. It was, the lines were so blurred. It was the only time of the year where you could have full sex with a ghost, and everyone really, really took advantage of that, the blurring of the lines between the living and the dead. You had to, of course, use protection, because the last thing you want to do is get a ghost pregnant. So you would fashion a Johnny from, I suppose, a sheep's gut, tie a little hole in one end, and then draw two little eyes at the top, so the Johnny would resemble an even smaller ghost. So ancient Celts marked Samhain as the most significant of the 4 quarterly fire festivals, taking place at the midpoint between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. During this time of year, hearth fires in family homes were left to burn out while the harvest was gathered. After the harvest work was complete, celebrants joined with Druid priests to light a community fire using a wheel that would cause friction and spark flames. The wheel was considered a representation of the sun and used along with prayers. Cattle were sacrificed, and participants took a flame from the communal bonfire back to their home to relight the hearth, which was handy. It's like when you charge your phone in someone else's house. It's a nice feeling. You're at a party or something, your phone's nearly dead. You're like, do you mind if I charge my phone here? You charge your phone while you're at the party, and then when you're leaving, you've got a fully charged phone. It feels great, just getting free power. It's a nice feeling. Early texts present Samhain as a mandatory celebration lasting 3 days and 3 nights, where the community was required to show themselves to local kings or chieftains. Failure to participate was believed to result in punishment from the gods, usually illness or death. Some documents mention 6 days of drinking alcohol to excess, typically mead or beer, along with gluttonous feasts. Can you imagine the state you'd be in after 6 days on the beer? Jesus, like, God, Liam looks awful. Do you think he's been punished by the gods? Not at all. Sure, he attended the mandatory 6 days of drinking as prescribed by the chieftains. So I don't know what's wrong with him. If I was on the beer for 6 days, I would be dead. I would be dead. I'd just be a dead man. Now, we're going into Samhain monsters. Because the Celts believed that the barrier between the worlds was breachable during Samhain, they prepared offerings that were left outside villages and fields for fairies. It was expected that ancestors might cross over during this time, and Celts would dress up as animals and monsters so that the fairies were not tempted to kidnap them. So that's why little kids dress up at Halloween. That's why adults dress up at Halloween, going to parties. It's to fool fairies into not stealing us. I'm not sure if that would still work, actually, with modern costumes. Just fairies going like, oh, I better not steal him. That's clearly Beetlejuice over there. He's already a demon. That's an Italian plumber. That wouldn't put you off, though. If you were a fairy and you saw a lad dressed up as an Italian plumber, you'd just be like, oh, there's a lad in holidays. So I don't know. I think by not dressing up as scary things and dressing up as like fucking Borat, are we kind of negating the whole purpose of dressing up? Imagine a fairy robbing you and you're dressed up as Borat with the green mankini, bringing you back to the netherworld. You're fucking freezing. Some specific monsters were associated with the mythology surrounding Samhain, including a shape-shifting creature called a Púca, which receives harvest offerings from the field. The Lady Gwyn is a headless woman dressed in white who chases night wanderers and was accompanied by a black pig. Yeah, I think if a woman was chasing me with a pet black pig, I would be absolutely fucking terrified. Just anyone with a black pig. I think black pigs are just scary.
Lovely stuff.
One theme of the Púca's folklore is their proclivity for mischief. They're commonly said to entice humans to take a ride on their back, giving the rider a wild and terrifying journey before dropping the unlucky person back at the place they were taken from. That would be annoying. That'd be annoying if you're coming home from a Halloween party and you spotted a Púca and they offered you, do you want to lift on me back? And like you're half full of beer and you're dressed up as Beetlejuice or something. And he gives you a mad ride around the fields, like hopping all over the place and your belly's going mad. You're like little barrel of Guinness sloshing around. And then they drop you back to where they took you from. That'd be so... I wouldn't mind if a Púca, dropped you down the road or dropped you home. That'd be great. Give him a fiver. While the Púca stories can be found across Northern Europe, Irish tales specify a protective measure for encountering a Púca. It's said that the rider may be able to take control of the Púca by wearing sharp spurs, using those to prevent being taken or to steer the creature if you're already on his back. So there's a translation of an Irish Púca story here. An búhal bó agus an Púca, which I think means the boy cow or the cowboy. Is búhal bó cowboy? The cowboy in the Púca, told by the storyteller Sean O'Crone, describes this method of control of the Púca as done by a young boy who had been the creature's target once before. So this young lad went in the Púca, rode around the place and was wrecked. And he got into work and the farmer said, what has you so late? And the lad told him, I was on a fucking Púca, man. I've been fucking riding around on a Púca for the last hour. I'm wrecked. That's why I'm so late. The farmer says, I've spurs. Put them on you tonight. And if he brings you, give him the spurs. So the lad did that. And the Púca threw him off his back and the lad got back early enough so he didn't miss work the next night. Within a week, the Púca was at him again after housing the cows. Come here to me, said the lad, so I can get up on your back. And the Púca said, have you those sharp things on? And the man says, I certainly do. And the Púca says, right, well, I'm not going near you again. So that's an actual transcript from an old Púca story told by storyteller Sean O'Crone. Wonder if it's any relation to Lee Cronin. So, Samhain in the Middle Ages. As the Middle Ages progressed, so did the celebrations of the fire festivals. Bonfires, known as Saunanigans. It looks like shenanigans, which were more personal Samhain fires near the farmers, became a tradition. So rather than everyone meeting up in the middle of the town or the middle of the whatever you're all hanging out together. So rather than having one big fire, people started having little fires by their farms to protect the families from fairies and witches. This is when we started carving turnips in the Middle Ages, which the Americans called jack-o'-lanterns, attached by strings to sticks and embedded with coal. So you'd take an old pumpkin, you'd spend, Jesus Christ, 4 hours carving it, because a pumpkin a turnip is a hard thing to carve. So you'd carve your turnip and you'd cut yourself, I'd say 8 or 9 times, and then you put a little lump of coal into the middle of it to give it a nice little glow. In Wales, men tossed burning wood at each other in violent games. Northern England, men paraded with noisemakers, not as hardy as the Wales boys. The Wales boys toss burning wood at each other in violent games. That doesn't even sound like a tradition. That just seems like somebody settling a score. And then, of course, you have Christian Samhain. As Christianity gained a foothold in pagan communities, church leaders attempted to reframe Samhain as a Christian celebration. The church were notorious for this crack, where they would just take some pagan stuff and like a pagan celebration, because we loved it. We loved our pagan celebrations. And they'd be like, right, well, we're having a party on the same night. It's a bit ignorant. It's like if you hear that somebody had a 21st on a Friday and you're like, right, well, I'm actually having my 21st on a Friday. And, you know, you've got a better band. You've got a DJ, maybe like a foam party or something like that. And you're just drawing people away from the old pagan ways. So the first attempt to reframe Samhain was Pope Boniface in the 5th century. He moved the celebration to May 13th and specified it as a day celebrating saints and martyrs. The fire festivals of October and November, however, did not end with this decree. It was just too much crack. You couldn't stop doing Samhain. It was just fucking 3 days of drinking, maybe 6 days of drinking, dressing up as spooks, run around the place, scaring the shit out of your neighbours. That sounds class. So in the 9th century, Pope Gregory moved the celebration back to the time of the fire festivals, but declared it All Saints' Day on November 1st. All Souls' Day would follow on November 2nd. So that took. Gregory made the right move there, put it on the same day. So the merging with Samhain and Halloween, neither new holiday did away with the pagan aspects of the celebration. October 31st became known as All Hallows Eve, or Halloween, and contained much of the traditional pagan practices before being adopted in the 19th century America through Irish immigrants bringing their traditions across the ocean. So after the famine, a load of Irish people got on the boats, headed over to America, introduced the Yanks to All Hallows Eve. Can you imagine how terrifying? Imagine seeing some lad who survived a famine, you know, dressing up in a shawl and coming around asking for sweets and cakes in your house. Would have scared the shit out of the Yanks. So that's trick-or-treating arrived in America then. Mumming was the practice of putting on costumes, going door to door and singing songs to the dead. Cakes were given as payment. Halloween pranks are also had a tradition in Samhain, but they were always blamed on fairies. That's what I love about the fairies. I feel like we invented fairies just to, you know, act the bollocks with each other. Where if you don't like a neighbour, you know, you just do little pranks on him. Put a tile over his fire so all the smoke goes back into his house, or milk his cow when he's not looking. Put a burning bag of dog poo on the door, set it on fire, kick the door, run like hell, and then take the seat off his bicycle. So when he chases you, he just gets a sore bum. And then you just blame it on an old fairy. So that's kind of the complete history of Halloween, from the Celts up to last week, actually. So I hope that was informative. As I said, this is a different type of podcast because Justine's not here and I have nobody to bounce off of. So I hope you all liked it. So I actually have some clips of Justine here to sort of, I don't know, give you your fix. So how was that, Justine?
100%.
There we go. Justine, we do miss you and we should have you back next week. And if not, I'll have you replaced with this soundboard again. So that's it. That's the complete history of Halloween, dating back from the Celts to just last week there. So I hope you all enjoyed that. So Justine will be back next week. We'll be here on all about her holidays, how she got on. Until then, hope you have a spooktacular Halloween. I got some messages last week about my film recommendation of The Substance, and I have to say I should have warned you. Gavin Richardson Ward says, I'm never taking a movie recommendation of you again. My God, that was a journey. Yeah, look, I should have said it's not for everyone. It was honestly, it's the most squeamish film I've ever seen. Like, I'd watch literally anything, any kind of horror, but I watched The Substance and I wanted to peel my face off. But I really enjoyed it. So, Gavin, I hope I expanded your brain And I hope I made you enjoy something that you probably wouldn't have picked yourself. And yeah, there's a few other people who are not happy with my movie recommendation. But however, this is what makes life interesting, you know. Folks, this has been lovely. Ye have been lovely. Thank you for all the lovely messages. Don't forget to give us a rating on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You have been absolutely lovely. We'll see you again next week. Good luck. Oh, and I want to do a big thank you to the good folk at Re-Raw who sent us a beautiful package of lovely goodies and class merch and lovely sweet cans. We really, really appreciate it. They said they're absolutely loving the lovely show every week, lads. Gurumi and Mahagut for the belly laughs from everyone at Re-Raw. So Re-Raw, we want to give you a lovely thank you and a kiss back. Ye are class. Thank you so much.
This show is part of the HeadStuff Podcast Network, a hub for the creative and the curious. Shows are produced in association with HeadStuff and the Podcast Studios Dublin. Find out more or become a member at headstuffpodcasts.com.